Matt and Buffy Payne are a couple driven by purpose. Through their nonprofit, Outer Circle Foundation, and faith-based organizations like Few and Dudes, their mission is clear: to spark positive change, empower others, and build a better world, one connection at a time. She is Chick. He is Dude. Welcome to the Chicken Dude Stuff podcast.
Hey, everybody, it's Matt and Buff from Chicken Dude Stuff. So thanks for joining us today, and I'll let you make the introduction because yes, I will. Yeah, I will grace you with that today.
Okay. So we have today founder and CEO of LifeKnight, Avery. And Avery, I know that you got married not too long ago and your last name changed. And so I want to let's give you the opportunity to introduce the right last name.
It's Petrovsky. I haven't even changed it on all of my work things. So
had to give it a trial run, make sure it was good.
It was, yeah. I just changed my name officially last month after 11 months of being married.
Well, welcome, Avery. Thanks for joining us today. I know your story. Matt knows your story, but I think a great piece for you to share with our viewers is your story of what led you to LifeKnight and the creation of LifeKnight. So tell us your story.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So before I was in tech as a business, I was a realtor and a real estate broker in the state of Florida and in Michigan. And I started some real estate companies and was very tech forward. So I had that part to help me do my job, created a couple platforms, and really did really well actually in that industry. And my last position was a real estate broker in Central Florida, on the Space Coast of Florida. And I was selling commercial properties, and I was on a showing one day with somebody that the minute I met them, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I knew there was something wrong with this person. I had those immediate alarm bells. The only thing that I had in place with my business partner at the time was to call him if something went wrong. And I remember at some of my old companies, when I actually had an employer, they were like, call the office and say you want the red file. And those were the kind of archaic things that were in place to protect people like me out in the field. And so I was showing him the property. There was 2 levels to it. He wanted me to go upstairs. Luckily, I had my wits about me, and I was like, get out of the property as soon as possible. So I told him he was free to go look at anything he wanted, but that I was going to go outside and wait for the owners because they were going to come to the showing, which was not true. So I ended up getting outside, and I'll never forget this, but there was a woman that lived across the street, and there was a condo across the street, and I knocked on the door, and I told her that I was very uncomfortable with what was going on and that I thought that I could be in danger. And she had told me that her best friend 17 years prior had been murdered at an open house for a residential showing. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I got that freaky little tidbit of information, and she kind of helped me, feel a little bit more comfortable, went back into her condo. He came out, followed me to my car, tried to not let me get in my car. And luckily I was able to get away. And I called the police and found out that he had a history of domestic violence, mental illness. He was ex-military and had gone through a divorce. He was saying very derogatory things about his ex-wife and women, and, needed help, really. So I was very thankful that I got out of the situation without being physically harmed, but I knew that I was in a very sort of dangerous, profession, that I was putting myself in these vulnerable situations every day. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if something had happened? Nobody would know where I was, when I was supposed to come home, who I was with. There was going to be all these unanswered questions for my family. I just kept, thinking about that in my mind. So, being the techie that I was then and still am, I started researching apps, solutions for personal safety, and I just couldn't find anything. I was just like, there's nothing out there for personal safety. I even went to the National Association of Realtors' own webpage that has one page on realtor safety products. And right on the top, it says, we don't endorse any of these. We don't vet any of these, but here's some things you can try. And it just seemed like the entire industry didn't really care. And I still feel that way about the real estate industry, that they don't really care about the people they make money on. But I was part of a meetup group in Central Florida for tech people who like to go and geek out and talk about tech. So I showed up one night and I said, hey, I have this need and there's nothing out there. I want to try to build it. And that's how the original LifeKnight platform and the lowest safety app was initially born.
Wow. And I imagine there's many people out there that still feel that way in their jobs or if they're out and about. New to a community, you don't know folks, and you're out and about, you feel vulnerable. I think even with the technology that may be out there today, that with the smart devices, people probably don't have full awareness. They probably don't know how to use it, or worse yet, they think it won't happen to them.
Yep.
It's kind of crazy.
So Avery, when you rolled it out, and remind me, how many years ago was this? It's been a while, right?
So yeah, this happened about 10 years ago. And so we went into sort of R&D mode for the first couple years, just trying to figure out how to make this work. The person that came out to help me was the owner of a telecom company. And he said, I think I can help you make that direct connection to 911, which became one of our core differentiators. But I started working with some great people to build out the first iteration, but it was a couple years to figure out how to integrate with, our country's 911 system. And we actually worked with first responders first to find out, first of all, can we do this? And secondly, how would you like to see us do this? What would help your lives? Because although they weren't our customer, they were ultimately going to be partners in, if something was escalated. So that's kind of how it started. And it took us about 2 years to get our first real prototype for testing. And then we started with the safety app, trying to sell to realtors and social workers.
Have you had people come to you and say, hey, this saved my life because of X, Y, or Z?
We did a trial with social workers, Brevard Family Services, it was called then. And they were out in the field, they were using it. And we did have some incidents where it was pretty scary and they felt like something really bad could have happened if, in this case, they had the alarm triggered to go to their supervisors, and the supervisors could then intervene. So we didn't have any escalations to 911 in that instance, but yes, there was, in our initial feedback, there were people who said that it kept them out of a really scary situation. And also, when I would speak in the beginning, I did a lot of, pitching. I would speak in front of groups of people and realtors and all kinds of folks. And I would always have people come up to me and tell me stories every single time somebody about their daughter at college, or a realtor who had a worse situation, people came out of the woodwork and kind of said, yeah, something really bad happened to so and so or me. And it just made me realize how prevalent it was. But in the early days, and I think this has changed now, and this is why we're hitting the market really hard right now. In the early days, I think like 10 years ago, even 8 years ago, people weren't as aware of personal safety or situational awareness, myself included. When I first was in real estate, I had no clue. I was young and thought I would never, nothing would ever happen to me. But I think people are much more aware of it now. And I think there's a liability, especially for companies, to protect their folks. And that's kind of where we're focusing.
Yeah. So help people understand when, the differentiator is you with the telecom company going direct 911, and help people understand that, because I think there's a lot of confusion with, it's just everybody's going to get to 911 at some point in time. But, kind of help with that process so people understand why that's so critical and why that you're so much different than others.
Yeah, that's a great question. So our 911 system was built in the 1960s on copper wire, right? So everybody had a phone. That phone was attached to an address. Pretty simple process. Somebody calls and you automatically know what address it's coming from. The cell phone phenomenon, the smartphone phenomenon took over, and the 911 system did not catch up to it. It's trying with E911 and next generation 911. And hopefully within the next 5 years, our entire country will be on that new system. But it isn't currently, and it certainly wasn't 10 years ago. So the difference is, if you call 911 from your cell phone, they can triangulate you. So they can tell sort of in a radius of where you might be. But you still need to know where you are. You need to be able to verbally articulate and say something is wrong with me. And they still might not find you. It still might be something that they can't really tell where you are or what's going on. And God forbid something happens to you where you can't. Because initially people would say, well, why don't I just call 911? Well, what if you're locked in a trunk? What if you're drugged? What if you're having a heart attack and you can't? What if you're having a stroke and you cannot say anything? Like, people, unless they're in a situation or have a loved one who's been in a situation, they typically are sort of blind to what could potentially happen. So the difference between just calling 911, or let's take it a step further with some of these apps that they claim it's a connection to 911, even Apple's SOS, it's a dialer. So the automated part is they automatically dial 911, but you still have the same problem. You need to be able to speak. They need to be able to figure out where you are. So what we did is we created a direct connection that has a text to speech component that tells the first responder, comes in as a call, tells the first responder who's in trouble, where they are, latitude, longitude, what their cell phone number is, who they were meeting, all the details that we collected on them. They have a unique DID number, which is different from their cell number. It differentiates them and kind of tells first responders who they are, and that we have authenticated them through the 911 system and that this is a legitimate call. They then have all that information populated on their screen. So they see the latitude, longitude. If they have an additional screen that shows a little dot of where someone is, it'll show them if the person's moving or not. And then we create a callback. So we parse the call back to the user, and it creates an open line. So they now have the person who's in trouble on the open line, all of the relevant information, their exact geolocation with their exact coordinates, and they still will respond even if the person, again, can't articulate. Because if you call 911 and you go from your phone and someone hits you over the head, they're still going to come, right? They're not going to be like, well, because you couldn't tell us all the pertinent information, we're not going to show up. Now, that can vary based on where you're at, but most PSAPs, their policy is if we get a legitimate 911 call, we are going to respond. Yeah, so that's the big differentiator, and it's all automated. So literally, if there was no one able to say anything, like in a domestic dispute situation, we're still going to be able to send that information.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's big difference.
Yeah.
So now, Avery, let's kind of transition into, I mean, that's Lois app and some of those pieces. Let's talk about what we're doing with a platform and with AI agents. Let's share that vision, mission, and what we're working on, because I love when you start talking about how we can not only detect but also direct in a crisis. And so let's share with the audience information about that.
So we transitioned from, I would say, just a basic security platform. So detecting if someone doesn't check in and then directing it to either a loved one or a supervisor or first responder, to adding AI agents and wearables. And I know AI is a little, some people think that it's going to take over the world. Some people think it's the greatest thing ever. We just look at it as a tool. We've always been using it. So we used it for our text to speech from the very beginning. So we've been using Watson from the very beginning. And we had a partnership with IBM Watson last summer, and we brought them an AI agent that we had built that was supposed to help a PSAP when the call center was when there were too many calls coming in. Let's see if we can help with call volume. We built on top of those AI agents, and we thought, well, if we could integrate wearables and detect more than just geolocation and whether or not somebody had not checked in, we could do a lot more, and we could potentially get into different spaces like med tech and where we're at right now, which is the senior living space. Because that is an extremely vulnerable population. And so we built 4 agents, and really you can look at them like little robo triage people. They each have their own job, and they take data that comes from a wearable like the one I'm wearing, which is a Garmin watch, which is streaming my heart rate and a couple other things right now. And it starts to detect if there is something wrong with the person. Now, what it does that we couldn't do prior was predictability detection. So once they start learning the behavior of a person, and I always use the example of someone who's in an assisted living facility, and they always wake up at 8 a.m. And then one week they start getting up at 10, 11, noon. Well, that's something that may or may not lead to a health event. So it's something that caregivers need to be aware of, need to check up on, and they're not caught with a catastrophe. It's not something that built up that nobody saw, because a lot of these things are subtle. And when you have 200 patients, that you're taking care of, or 200 residents in a facility, it's really hard. Those caregivers have a very hard job. So we thought if we could detect anomalies, not just, oh, the person's having an outright heart attack or they've left the facility, but if we could start detecting anomalies, then we could actually help stave off some of these more emergent health issues. So that kind of brought us into a whole different world where it opened up the doors for senior living, hospitals, rehab centers, and all other kinds of people who might benefit from having their health monitored.
It's phenomenal. It's so fascinating. Um, like Matt and I talk about you and LifeKnight and the mission, and even beyond the senior centers, going into corporate spaces, going into looking at forward into our veterans and first responders and how we work with them through our nonprofit, and just having this tool along with the wearable and being able to get ahead of situations. Um, like I can look down the road, Avery, and think, man, this would be great for school age children where teachers take them on field trips, right? And they, with the geolocation and just making sure all the kids are at the same place, or, you know, things of that nature. Like there's so many use cases that we can come up with as this starts progressing.
Almost too many. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you hit it. You know, when before we left the corporate space, being chief security officers, right? Duty of care is such a huge portion now of making sure that your people are safe, regardless of where they're working, regardless of where they are. It still falls back on that duty of care. And then there's certain countries and states that have lone worker programs, and they stipulate, you know, if you have a lone worker working, you have to check in on them. You have to be able to know that they're okay. And, you know, this is a great opportunity to, you know, have that information come back to your GSOC or, you know, central, whatever you have as your hub, to make sure that those people, and it keeps the human element from that person having to call that person every hour, every 2 hours, whatever it is, you know, whatever that regulation is. So, you know, there's so many really cool things about it, you know,
Totally.
to help automate it and get in front of it, you know.
Yeah.
Talk to us about, I know there's been a lot of press that's come out. One about your chief medical officer that has come over.
Dr. Tom Osborne. Yep.
So tell us about some of the really cool stuff that you've had come out in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he came on as our chief advisor in the medtech space. So he is the chief medical director at Microsoft, and he's an adjunct professor with Stanford, and he has a ton of experience in medtech and aging population, as well as with veterans and the VA. So he just seemed to be a perfect fit for us. I met him several months ago. It took several months of getting to know him getting to know us, and he doesn't say yes to people easily. So when he finally said yes to us, we were so excited because his experience is amazing and he's brilliant, but he's also a very good person and just has a heart to help people. So that was extremely exciting. And then shortly after that, we had our second patent awarded. So our first patent was awarded, I think, a little over 2 years ago, and that was on the platform itself. The alarm notification system is what they called it, and how everything worked inside of our API. The second patent was on how we do it in relation to the 911 system. So once that patent was awarded, we became the first company that has a patent on a direct connection to 911 from a personal device, which had never happened before. And so we are sort of going to dominate that space and be able to help with the next generation 911 migration. And I think our company's tech will be instrumental in all of that. So it's been extremely exciting and busy, and we're developing a bio patch. We haven't sent out a press release on that yet, but internally we're starting to develop a nicotine patch type thing that somebody would wear on their arm or their chest, and it would last, I think, we might be able to get it to last more than a week now that I've talked to a couple of people who are, again, very brilliant, where you just throw it away. And an elderly person is who we envisioned it for, somebody who maybe doesn't want to wear a watch. They don't want to charge it. They don't want to worry about it. It can go in the shower. It's waterproof. So we'll be filing that patent this month, and also an additional patent to cover our AI agents and our wearable integrations. So we'll be in a really good position to carve out this exciting new space.
And when you go to the patch, right? Let's just take the patch. And my grandma both of my grandmothers were both in assisted living facilities. Both had either Alzheimer's, dementia. I mean, it was so many years ago. There was kind of speculation of which was what back then, and but we knew it was a memory issue. And there's so many different things that someone in that space could have happened to them, like you said, that's very subtle. Because let's face it, those that are in that profession to work with those patients in those facilities are stretched very thin. There's a ton of people that they're trying to take care of. And, yes, they have some people monitoring things if they're hooked up to machines. But like my grandmothers and in their space, would rip things off. They wouldn't want things, and, they would forget what it was, or, whatever. This kind of takes that out of everything with broadcasting that health data, keeping them, within a certain part of the facility. I mean, there's so many different really cool things that it does to help alleviate that stress from the work staff.
Yeah, and that's really the objective when we're talking about being in a facility. Again, these people who work with this population they're very overworked. And even the ones who absolutely love what they do get burned out, because it's just very hard. I know with my own parents and their health complexities as they get into their mid 80s, just staying on top of all of that is hard for me to do. So I think it's just, again, another tool. And the way we envision it is that the patch would connect to a hub. So we have a hub that we've built an MVP on that takes all of the streaming information from the wearables. So we could do it today with a wearable, let's say in an assisted living facility. And it just shows whoever's managing that day or that hour, that block of time, shows who's in the facility. There's a heat map that shows where they are. And then there's an escalation, a color-coded escalation of what may or may not be going on with them. And some of it is like somebody fell, somebody left the facility, emergent, red. Others are very, like we talked about before, Sarah's been waking up a lot later lately. You might want to go check up on her. It could just be she's been staying up watching, a new show or whatever. You don't know, but go check up on her, find out, take her vitals, take a little extra care to make sure she's not leading up to a health event.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I mean, I from the first responder and veteran standpoint, I always go, is there a way that, somebody with PTSD, or not even that, if, I'm a patrolman and I'm out in my car and I'm going through my daily activities, and I can understand the stress that I'm going through in my body and what that means to me as a person, right? Or could I do something where I could almost predict when somebody's going to have a PTSD episode or an event? I call them the black cloud days. That's what I've called them. And, is there a way that we could kind of predict that with level of respiration, heart rate, some other kind of things that we may be able to monitor? I mean, it's almost endless, some of the things that potentially it could do.
We just added we're testing it right now, the ability to to monitor emotion, which is a huge predictor of physical events because it produces fear. Even when you're going to get sick, you become just in a primal state. Your body is kind of afraid. So I think as the technology gets better and better, our predictive abilities will get better and better. And we're still going to need people to intervene. There's no replacing humans in this whole chain of events. We are just a tool to help humans do their job better and not be so overwhelmed, and to let families know that their loved ones are being protected in whatever environment they're in. But at no point are we ever going to get to that point where we're not going to need humans. I don't even want to live in a world if it gets to that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's so critical right there, right? That is never going to take place. This is just it's no different than when I'm hooked up in a hospital bed with my EKG and it's broadcasting to the nurse's station, right? It's just a tool for them to monitor.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It's a very savvy tool.
it is. And I mean, you don't just get awarded patents for nothing.
Not usually.
A lot of geeky work behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's some of the best work, is the geeky work.
Yeah.
Especially when the downstream is to save lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So what's going on now, Avery, in LifeKnight? What are your focus? Where's your energy? What are you seeing in the next couple months?
So we're really just pushing to commercialize at this point. We've done so much research and development, customer discovery. We've done a few pivots in our technology direction. It's always stayed at that core basic platform, but we've built a lot, and there comes a time where you have to stop building and you have to start selling it and getting it out there. So that's what we're doing now. We are focusing mainly on the senior space, which would include senior living facilities, rehabs, even home health care companies. Security, there's certain things that we're still interested in terms of workplace safety. Um, Even though the real estate industry might not be ready for us necessarily, there's a lot of industries that have acknowledged that there's a big problem, as Matt spoke to. And we're moving forward with pilots and traction with those groups. We hired an amazing sales director. He's our fractional sales director, um, and he's come on to help get that process going more smoothly. He's definitely a genius salesperson. I do not have that ability. I don't have that gift, but he does, and I think he's going to help us roll it out in a really big way. We are not consumer facing at this time. We're B2B, but that could change, or we're actually looking at partners who already have a consumer base like Life 360 or even Life Alert. If they want to enhance the products that they already have a captive audience for, we'd be happy to partner with them in some way. We're looking at some wearable partners as well. We've got a lot of great conversations going on, and we are probably going to be looking at, our first big customers this last quarter.
Awesome. So when you look down the road, what is your ideal vision with LifeKnight?
I think when I first started the company, I thought everybody should have this. It just should be something that should be intrinsic. It should be in all the phones. Everyone should have the ability to get help when they need it. So I don't know how that is going to articulate exactly, but I think having a bigger partner, a bigger company that wants to take what we've built and run it in a global way would be phenomenal. If we end up doing it, great. That's fine too. We're open to either scenario, but I think big partners, even some of the big tech giants, would be interested in the technology and the patents. And my objective is to get it in as many hands as possible. So if they already have billions of users, it just makes sense to partner with a bigger entity to help push this out to the masses. And that's really my goal, is just to have as many people using it as possible, especially the elderly population and people disabled, people who are at risk, veterans who are in rural areas. We're working on a backup system that is based on radio technology that works when people don't have Wi-Fi or cell service. So I'll probably keep building things and creating things, and no matter what happens. But yeah, that's what I would love to see happen with this company.
Awesome. So when you reach that goal, Avery, what are you going to do with all your free time?
Probably just make music and
Yeah, so I want to pivot there. So behind you is a guitar and a keyboard, right? So let's go into music and you know, give us a little bit of the history of your music and kind of where you want to go.
so music has always been a part of my life. My dad was actually an opera singer way back before I was born. He was studying in New York City and was going to go on the road and do the whole thing. And his sister said, nope, go and find a good woman and get married and have a family. And that was actually the right thing for him. Because she knew how hard that life was going to be. And she kind of knew my dad was a family guy. But he always sang. He sang in church. And they would take us to operas and the symphony. And then I started taking piano when I was 7. And all the way through till the end of high school, I took classical piano, and sang. And then, you know, I kind of got into, during college and after, just getting into the working world, sort of put that on the side, did visual arts for a while. That was sort of my outlet, but I knew music was kind of always in the background. And it came out in a big way during COVID. I actually wrote and produced, well, I had a producer, who I built the LifeKnight platform with, same person. And we recorded an album called Quarantine, and we released it that year. I think it was 2020 or 2021. And then I released 3 more albums, and I wrote 20 more albums of material. It was literally like decades of stuff just pouring out of me. I had the time to do it because I couldn't go anywhere, and it poured out of me. So I think it was one of those things where God was saying, like, this is the time I want you to really hone this craft and really do this. And I had sang in church, and I was part of a church down in Florida where, you know, I was on the worship team and was singing and doing all that. But I think I had a real need to write my own material. And I always thought, it wouldn't it be great if there wasn't any Christian music? It was just, that's just what music was, that it was all worship music or all music that uplifted people, that talked about subjects that were uplifting and that had a tone that made people feel good, but that we didn't label it. It was just, that's how music was. And so that's kind of my dream, is to sort of create a genre of music that is going to transform people from the inside out. And they don't have to necessarily identify as Christian or spiritual even, but it'll affect them and hopefully lead them to, you know, having a relationship with God, which we all need. But yeah, that's the next chapter.
I love that chapter. Because you've already shared some of your music with us, and it's beautiful. It's very inspiring.
So where can those listening find your music?
You could go to Instagram. I think it's Ascendance Band, ASCENDANTS band. I can give you the link. And yeah, that has some of the more poppy stuff. I haven't released I haven't released the more spiritual. I'm actually been sitting on a record for like a year and a half now. I was supposed to release it, but then I got distracted doing this whole company thing. But it's I did release one called War Paint, which is sort of a meditative instrumental, and it was based on spiritual, being a spiritual warrior. And then there was another one that the one I'm sitting on is called Armor, and it's another instrumental, but it's basically about putting on the armor of God. So that one will come out hopefully soon. And then my husband and I just recorded a record and we're releasing it on our anniversary, September 21st. And that band is called 44 Portals. And it's also it's very spiritual, and it has a lot of themes, a lot of biblical themes actually in it, but it's not overt in that way.
And and your husband was actually the winner of our M4 that we had at our gala in May. Has he shot it yet?
He hasn't yet. We actually had it out the other day. He had all of them out. um, yeah, he's got, and we are, it's been really hot, so we haven't really wanted to go, but we are going to go and we're going to shoot it, and he's going to shoot it, I should say. I might work up to it and try. But he was very excited to win that. It was the same month he won a Mickey Mantle rookie card.
Oh, wow.
He was feeling really, really lucky that month.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yep.
Wow.
No. Well, I think eventually, God's gonna do what he did to Buff, wake her up at 3:00 in the morning when he was telling her to write the book, and she fought, for months, and then finally said, "Okay, I'm going to go and do this." I would almost envision him to do that with you, with your music at some point in time, saying, "Yeah, you're not just going to sit on this. It's time to get it out in the world."
Yeah, and I have, so my chief strategy coach, her name's Kelly Richards. She's in the Silicon Valley area. She's been working with me for a couple of years. She's more of a strategist, but she looks at the whole person, right? And she's like, there's no such thing as when this happens, you'll do this. Like when everything's perfect, I'll get married. When everything is this, I'll do. So it just, that's not real life. So she's helped me understand that this is something I need to do. And I have, in the past year, I've written another couple albums. So it's something that even if it's just doing cover songs or, covering spiritual music or whatever it is, it's something that is important. And she said it will actually help what you're doing with LifeKnight. If you cut that part of yourself off, you're cutting out this flow and this gift. If you open it, it'll open up doors that you wouldn't even know existed, that you wouldn't think were connected, but they are. So she's helped me continue, and not that it's my central focus, but it's not as far on the back burner as it was. And she's helped me stay in that. And it takes all the left side stuff and turns it into right brain stuff, and it helps balance everything out. So yeah, it's important.
That's a very good perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many instruments do you play?
So I play keyboard, piano, and I sing. And then I record and I compose on a digital workstation, and I do what I would call pre-production. And then I usually pass it on to a producer, and then we have a guy that masters here in Detroit.
She's got all sorts of crazy skills.
I know. A woman of hidden talents.
Many talents.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So from, as you've gone through your iterations of business and you've learned from people, and I know you surround yourself with people that they offer their expertise, but they're also believers, and you all kind of thrive on each other, right? So when if somebody were to come to you and say, Avery, give me your keys to life, or your kind of top one or two kind of things, what would you tell them?
Wow, something that took me just a long time to learn is that when you don't make it about you, everything opens up for you. So I think people get so stuck in this egoic thing, or they get attached to I am this job, or I am a mom, or these labels, and it becomes a burden sometimes. And I was feeling that with my company. When I met your wife, I was like, I was in a low place and frustrated and didn't feel supported, and because I was kind of making it about me to a degree, and like Avery's struggle. And she helped me reframe it into the true heart of what I was doing. And once I realized, like, no, this is about the world. This is about helping people. This isn't about Avery's struggles. You're a conduit. Let it flow. Everything changed. I mean, it was like a complete 180. So I think, and I did that in stages as I moved through life. When you're younger, you tend to be more egoic anyway. And then you get older and you get humbled, and then you get hit down, God knocks you down, you get humbled again. So I would say realizing the bigger picture and realizing that you're just an instrument and a conduit is such a big relief. It takes all the burden off, and letting God work through you instead of thinking you can be like God, or just letting that flow happen. Like, I can't orchestrate all these things that God does. There's no way. So that's been a huge, huge lesson for me, and it's helped me. It's not perfect. I still am human. I still get upset about things. I still worry about things. But now I have a sense of peace where I'm like, all right, if he wants to take me to the very edge of this situation, I'm going to go there, because he's always protected me, taken care of me, and given me the resources I've needed my entire life. And that's another thing I recommend people looking back on their history. When were you not able to rely on God? When did you not have the resources you needed? You might not have what you desire. You might not have everything you want, and you might not have it in the time you want, but you're always going to be taken care of. So that was important. And then just surrounding myself with people who, had their own amazing gifts and networks, and letting those people be in those roles, not micromanaging or thinking that I knew everything or had all the answers, but really letting people come in and saying to me, why don't you do it this way? Why don't you think about this? And not fighting it has been huge. Working with Buffy has been amazing. She's an example of somebody who has amazing gifts, and you too, Matt. Like, you're like a dream team, and you see things a different way that I don't. So allowing those relationships to come in, and those partnerships, where everyone really truly wants to help and has a heart for people, is it's changed the entire way that I look at business and life. So those are two big lessons that I've learned in the past several years that I think will carry me through.
And great lessons for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything?
Yeah.
Close?
You want to sing a song?
I'll leave that to you.
You don't want me to sing. Maybe we can have Avery on to sing sometime.
You could get out the violin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll play my violin, you sing.
Yeah. There you go.
Good. Maybe the next one.
Maybe the next one, yes.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to share that we haven't covered?
No, I just want to thank you for, doing this and having the faith in what I'm doing and being part of the journey. I feel so blessed. that you're both part of it. To me, it's just like the biggest blessing. And I'm excited to go through this process with this amazing team. I call it the dream team, but we really have an amazing team where everyone will become enriched, and then everyone will be able to go on and do their ministries in however way they want to do it. And what you guys are doing is incredible with your foundation and, helping people and helping veterans. It's amazing. I wish I had more time to help you all out, but that'll come too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's all God's timing. Right?
Yep.
We
Yep.
know that. We know that.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Avery, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. And goodness, I keep every week is like a new adventure working with you and what we're doing. And like I look down the road and I get excited and more excited, and I can't wait to see where God's going to take all of this.
Me too. Yeah, me too.